Okay, so we'll start the session. So firstly, I would like to thank all the participants for taking their time out from their busy weekends and joining in today. It's a pleasure to have all of you here on this show called Ask the Expert. So today we've invited Neil Bahel from Negen Capital, and we'll try and understand more from him in terms of, what he thinks about markets, the outlook of equity markets, and how he began the journey. So we're going to have a detailed discussion. But before that, just want to tell you that, at AIF and PMS Experts India, we keep organizing these knowledge-based sessions. And the whole idea of organizing this session is to empower and educate as many investors as we can. And I would like to thank all of you from bottom of my heart for taking the time out, joining in, and appreciating and encouraging these sort of initiatives. And I would urge all of you rather to speak to your friends and family and tell them more about this show. And if they are interested, allow them to join in. Do share. So the mission is to reach out to as many investors as we can and educate them as much as we can. Because unfortunately, the financial literacy in our system, as a country, in our education system is very, very low. And what I feel is the more we educate and empower investors, there are more possibility that they create more long-term wealth. So please join us with this mission. I would like to once again thank all the participants, investors for joining in today. So it's a very special day. We've invited Neil, and Neil is perhaps the youngest portfolio managers we have in India as far as portfolio management services are concerned. He's 36 and he's got 21 years of experience in terms of investing in equity markets. So I'm sure all of you really curious to know how did he manage to get this kind of experience when his age is only 36. So that is one. Today we'll also understand more from him is how he began his journey in equity markets, and how did he be, why do you think that what was the reason for him to enter into this industry. So Neil, firstly, welcome on the show of Ask the Expert.
Thank you for inviting me, Vikas ji. It's a pleasure to be here. I must tell you, this is a great platform that you have created. It gives a two-way communication channel between in this investor community. So it's a really great initiative. So thank you for making it. Thank you for inviting me. I'd also like to thank all the viewers who've come here today. It being a Saturday, everybody's in a holiday mode. So, I'll definitely not try to waste anyone's time, and I'll keep it short. I'll keep it bold, and I'll keep it more than anything. I'll keep it practical because I am not too much into giving PhD analysis on something. I prefer to explain via examples so that it's more easy to understand, more practical understanding. And I was reading some chats. Somebody said good jacket. So I don't do any of this. It's a benefit of marrying a fashion designer. So all these things come in a package. So thank you very much for your comment.
Sure, I think it is Akash who is.
Thank you, Akash, and whoever else said that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Neil. So first question is, so the format of the show is very simple. We'll be asking you questions on behalf of our investors. Today, this is for the first time that you've come on our show. So we would like to know more about you, more about your organization before we come to the main topic of value and growth investing. So the first question is, Neil, so you are 36 and you have 21 years of experience. So how is your journey began in Indian capital markets?
So, it's interesting. I started very early, and it was probably by chance or design. I don't know how it started. It was a long time ago. I was in school, and in my 10th standard, I happened to see the CNBC channel was on, and Udyan Mukherjee and I think Mitali was there, and they were talking. And when I saw the screen and I just saw those prices fluctuating up and down, I was like hooked on immediately. I just saw the screen for one day. I don't know whether it was the screen or whether it was Mitali. I don't know who was more instrumental in getting me hooked onto the market, but one of the two. But it started from there. I started investing. My family has no prior background in investing space. So when I told my father that, I'm very interested in this, so he was always supportive, and he said, try out whatever you want to do. So I started, and the day I started, I was like completely hooked onto it, and it was like basically a soul connection. So I think I was about 15 years old that time, and I invested at that time. I think the IPOs of Yes Bank and Petronet LNG had come, and I invested in those two. And the way they started going up, once you start making money, when you just come into it, then there is no looking back. So it just started from there, and there's a whole journey of learning, making mistakes. I've made so much mistakes I can't even count. I've gone through so many cycles. We went through the bull market in 2006, 5, 6, 7. Then we had the big crash of 2008. There was a lot of learnings over there. The biggest learning was that if you hold good companies, no matter what happens, the good companies generally come back. And if you do SIP, then you really don't have to worry and never have to time the market. So that was one big learning. The 2008 crash was good in order to help us realize that thing. And then every time I kept seeing some other the crisis every year. Like in 2009 there was some telecom scam crisis. Then in 2011-12 there was a European debt crisis. Then in 2013 probably in India there was a currency crisis where Raghuram Rajan had to come in and save everybody. There was no government inaction was happening. Then Mr. Modi came and won. So there was every year there was always something to worry about. And what the underlying factor is, when I see the chart of my portfolio, there have been the big correction at the time. When you look in a longer time frame, those corrections look nothing but minor blips. And the wealth creation journey means basically that you just have to keep investing in good companies and do SIP. And over the years, we kept learning about newer techniques, how to better fine tuning your strategy, and learning karte karte hum yahan aa gaye. And now in 2021, we have a pretty successful PMS. Last 15 odd months, we are ranked first in India. And hopefully the strategy that we are doing currently, nobody is doing. So hopefully the strategy keeps performing. And let's see where the road goes. I'm pretty sure that the next many years is going to be a big adventure in India. The way things are panning out, I feel a big adventure is about to unfold.
Sure. So the second question is, before we come to performance, of course, it's extraordinary performance that Negen PMS could manage to deliver. So I'd like to congratulate you, first of all, since you already talked about that. But before we move to the performance and the investment philosophy, if you could talk to us about why it is named as Negen Capital. What was the logic behind it?
We always wanted to do something which was next generation. The way we think is little bit outside the box, even in our investment philosophy. So I'm a big believer in technology as a space. Bulk of our portfolio is concentrated towards technology apart from special situations. So Negen is basically next generation thinking.
Okay, that's good. So now coming back to your investment philosophy. So if you could take us through your investment philosophy, what kind of philosophy that you follow, because you've delivered around almost more than 200% kind of returns. I saw the numbers other day. Then I also saw that the performance has been maintained over a period of time. So how did you manage to deliver this kind of performance? Of course, performance is an outcome, but I'm sure a lot of input goes behind. So we are all keen to know what is the kind of philosophy that you follow and what is the endeavor.
Yeah. So you're right. Performance is a process of bull market and bear market in a sense. But if you follow a process over the years, your portfolio would keep rising. What we do is we split the market into two parts. And we say one is the normal market, normal situation. And we say this is a market where there is a special situation happening. What I have realized is that in today's digital age, everybody is well informed and people try to do value investing. They say, I'll buy XYZ company because it is cheap. What happens is that market has pretty well understood why this company should be valued the way it is. So if you go out and, for example, today, whatever I say, just a disclaimer, it's just for educational purposes. Please do not take anything I say today as a, my word and as an investment advice, nothing like that. So when you say something like ITC is trading at a X value today, market has completely understood ITC. There is nothing more for there to be discovered. So ITC is trading at a particular price point because market knows how this company is going to pan out in the next few years. So it's valued absolutely perfectly. So if tomorrow you say ki I'm a value investor, I think ITC is cheap, and a bunch of these other stocks like a holding company or some PSU or some infrastructure, some real estate, they are all cheap. I'll buy them and I'll make money. That's the wrong way of doing it, because the old ways are finished and a new way of investing has come. Value investing, the old way is dead, is finished. And if one has to remain relevant in today's time, you have to do value investing in a new way. So we have come up with the other set of the market, which is called a special situation market. So we have divided the market in a normal situation and a special situation. Now, when ITC is to make a jump from a normal situation to a special situation basket, and either the promoter, new management comes in with a new vision, or if they say ki, I will demerge all the businesses and let these businesses have different managers, and we'll incentivize these managers and let them do what they have to do, break up the conglomerate structure. What will happen overnight is that all the separate businesses will start getting separate valuations based on their actual growth and not on the growth of the cigarette business. So when it comes in the special situation basket, now the market, which was efficiently valuing ITC earlier, has to value every single business inside ITC. It has to value the paper business, it has to value the cigarette business, it has to value the FMCG business, the hotel business. Now, when it has to do that, it has to now figure out what is going to happen, because the new manager has come, new strategy has come. Some of the previous shareholders who may have bought ITC may have bought ITC for the cigarette business. So the mutual fund which has bought it for the cigarette business may dump all the other things. For example, he may just dump the paper business, he will dump the hotel business. So when everybody dumps the other businesses, the stock prices, there's a lot of chaos and mayhem. So that is the opportunity. In this chaos and in this mayhem, if somebody is paying attention to the special situations whereby the company is going through a dramatic shift in its absolute structure, we can make a lot of money. So this is how we identify stocks. We are specialists, I would say, in special situations. I'll talk more about it in the presentation that I've made, but this is just a broad sense.
So when you talk about value, so whatever detailed understanding that I carry, so what is value? So there is an intrinsic value and there is a current value. And the significant gap of the value is called value investing.
Yeah.
So when it was started by
Graham
and Benjamin. So at that point of time, the valuation of those companies were itself very, very low. But as you have seen over a period of over many decades, the valuation started going up, and therefore the growth investing started shaping up. So what do you mean by value? When you say value investing, so what do you mean by that? If you could just elaborate a bit.
So, what you said is right. Value investing is basically buying something below the intrinsic value of the assets of the company. For example, assets minus liabilities. If you're getting it for less than that, practically that is value investing. But earlier on, what happened, as you said, markets were used to be low, or there used to be bear markets, or at least there was no information. There was not an age of information. Today is the age of information. You know everything. I know everything. It's so easy to just log on to Research Bytes or something like that and pick out a simple brokerage report and read something about the company. You'll get a broad sense. So there is no edge in that sense to do value investing anymore. The market pretty much understands how to value a particular company in a particular time. Now, this particular year is an outlier. The last few months have been an outlier. Everything has gone up, so forget it. But as the situation becomes normal next year, the year after, the men will be separated from the boys again. And then only a specific strategy or a specific set of companies will start doing good. So coming back to value investing is that buying something for lower than its actual value. But there is no edge in that. So the only way to do it is to do it via special situation now. So how I would like to term it is a special situation is nothing but value investing, but it's with a trigger. So instead of doing normal value investing, instead of buying ITC or ONGC today, you buy ONGC after it is gotten privatized, where some new, let's say XYZ new private sector promoter has come and taken it over, and now he has skin in the game. He is interested in increasing the market cap, and now he's going to run the show. If you're going to buy ONGC today, you're going to be disappointed. Yeah, maybe if you have some luck, it may go up, but we don't want to involve luck into it. We want to involve a specific process. And if you do a bunch of these special situations as a basket and include them in your portfolio, odds are you will comfortably beat the index. You will comfortably beat everybody around you.
Understood. So if you want to run any slide and tell us more about how do you create wealth, how do you deliver these kind of extraordinary.
So I'll just do my slide, my presentation that I had made. It's a short presentation.
Sure. So just a small announcement to all the participants. So if you have any questions, please type in your questions in Q&A box. So once the presentation is over, I'll start shooting those questions on your behalf. Thank you.
I think I have to thank Akash for this. Now I can see you also and the presentation also.
Okay.
So thank you very much for this.
Thanks, Akash.
Can you see my screen now?
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Yeah. So what I wanted to talk about today is value plus growth is the way to do it. What we do especially. So in a broad sense, I'll just explain the strategy in a broad sense. We'll get into detail inside. Value plus growth are opposite ends of a scale. People either do value investing or they do momentum and growth investing. It's very rare to find somebody doing both together in a one strategy. So what we have done, we've figured out a way to extract the best points out of the two and combine and do it in a way which nobody else is doing today. So we basically kind of bent the scale so that both meet together. So that's why I said with a twist. I'll just go to the next slide. Okay, this slide has nothing to do with the presentation. It's just to get everyone's attention. I can promise you there will not be any dancing today. Just an icebreaker in a sense. Right. So why value plus growth? You may have heard some people saying that, I want to buy quality stocks. I'll pay any valuation for it. 100 PE is fine. 125 PE is fine. I'll pay whatever. And this is just buy quality. Jo bhi bhaav hoga chalega. I feel, in my humble opinion, that is a wrong way of investing. And then there is another class of people who are pure value investors. And then, the fundamentalists of value investing, they say ki, I'll buy a stock because it's cheap. I'll buy a bunch of stocks because they are cheap, and I'll expect them to go up. And that is even a flawed concept. So that's why I thought that we should do value plus growth, where, you want to have quality stocks, which is part one of what I written here, and you want to buy stocks that are cheap, which is part two. And if you can mix them, that is going to be the ideal situation. But in a bear market, it's very easy to do. When a market crashes by say 30, 40, 50%, आप उठा लो, आपको value भी मिल जाएगा, growth भी मिल जाएगा, और सस्ते भी होंगे share, you can buy it. But what can you do it today? Now the markets are at all-time high. I can see some people in the chat, they have written, how do you buy stocks today? Stocks are at all-time high. So in order to buy stocks today, this is a particularly good strategy, value plus growth. We'll get to that now. So just one quote before I go to the next slide. Value investing, the old way, is dead. We discussed this before. It's over. So we need to figure out a new way to do it. And I spoke about this also earlier. We figured out two ways of looking at things. Okay. A normal situation and a special situation. What we need to do is figure out in today's expensive market, if you're going to buy a cheap company that you may think is a cheap company, you're not going to be able to get value out of it. So if you can find a special situation, you're going to be better off. Yeah, this is the slide I wanted to do it. So we broadly touched upon this, but in an efficient market, how will you figure out what is going to be cheap? Things are cheap because it's cheap for a reason. It's a digital age and everybody knows everything. You know everything. I know everything about a stock. And if you're going to buy a particular stock, like what we discussed a few examples, you're never going to end up making money. No one has any edge doing this. And of course, this is a bull market, and sometimes doing a random strategy in a bull market, you can still do okay. But in a normal year, it's not going to be easy to make money in such a market. So then we get to the special situation angle of it. The most beautiful part about the special situation is that there's too much chaos and too much mayhem when a special situation does happen. Yeah. So, coming back to special situations, the beauty of it is that, it's very complicated. There's too much mayhem and chaos in it. And there's a general lack of interest, mostly from the funds. So the main thing, what happens when a stock demerges, for example, is that you have invested in a particular company. Let's say you have invested in, we'll come back to the original topic of ITC. Let's say you, me, and some mutual fund has invested in ITC. And after the demerger happens, they get a few shares of all the other companies. And we have potentially invested in ITC for the FMCG business. So we'll all think the same. We'll say, let's keep the FMCG business. And what do we do with the paper company and the cigarette company and the other company, the hotel company? All of us together will dump the other shares. And when you sell, and when all of us sell the other shares together, there's going to be a situation where a period of time, maybe 6 months, 8 months, till all the shares come in the market, all those shares are going to keep falling. And the beauty of it in the special situation versus the normal situation is when the shares are falling over a period of time, they are falling not because of fundamentals. Okay, so you're going to get price fall not because of fundamentals. It's not because the market is valuing it the way it should be valued. They are going to be falling because somebody is selling in a forced manner due to various reasons. And that is the opportunity for us. You will end up getting lots and lots of shares below their actual intrinsic value because of forced selling. So for example, I'll give you one more example why this happens. It's like nowadays, if all of us invest in mutual funds are categorized. Large cap fund or a multi-cap fund or a mid-cap fund. Now what happens is when a large cap fund today gets ITC and it will, let's say, demerges, they will have lots of different stocks. Maybe the paper business will end up being a small cap or a micro cap. In that sense, they will not be allowed to hold on to this share. And when big mutual funds are going to come and sell a small cap company like the paper or the any other side business that they have, and when they sell it, that stock is going to end up falling well below its intrinsic value, and it will become a true value investing opportunity. And the beauty of it is that it's going to be cheap, not because the market is going to be valuing it to be cheap. It's going to be cheap because somebody is forced seller who's sold for a variety of reasons, and that's where we will end up getting the best of the best bargains in our life. Also, one thing that will aid us is that these kind of stocks end up going in the T group after the delisting, demerger, and when they relist again, they're in the T group. And in the T group, trade to trade group, there is no volume. And when somebody wants to, no matter what, come and exit it, you end up getting the shares at a significant discount. It becomes an ideal hunting ground for everybody. Second thing, what I've written here is it's too complicated. So in a conglomerate structure today, there are so many moving parts, and especially, what is the debt for which company. I mean, it's very difficult to identify what the strategy is for a different division, how they have structured it, who's handling which division. And even after the demerger, you don't know much as to who's going to do what, where the debt is going to go, how the company is going to evolve. And because of so many complications and so many questions, when a demerger happens, the market takes a while to understand how to value these companies. And while the market is taking its own time to value it, a smart investor can do his homework, and you can potentially get an opportunity to value a company before the market kind of figures it out. There are so many examples. The history is filled with examples where you can find companies where you could have made significant money because the market took a long time to figure out what their true worth is. And again, there's a general lack of interest in this. The reasons which I spoke earlier, where a mutual fund would be forced to sell it because it's going to be regulatory issues for him to hold on to a small cap when he's a large cap fund. So because of that, when a demerger comes, he's not interested because he knows there's too much complication for him to hold on to a demerged kind of entity. So they just don't get into something like this. And when the big institutions are not competing with you, and it's only you and a bunch of other people who are following this strategy, and from what I see, more or less nobody is following this strategy. It's going to be a situation where you end up making so much money when you get it right that you are always going to be ahead of most of your peers and most of the market anyway. So I would like everyone to focus on this one picture. This is my favorite picture. I've actually attached it, made a poster of it and put it on my wall. It has to remind me as to why we do special situations. Today, when you have a bunch of these companies going through the corporate action that they do, whether they change a promoter or whether they demerge or something to change the inner structuring of a company, you have to think of them in these 4 phases. There are 4 phases. The first phase is pretty self-explanatory. It's the ugly caterpillar stage, where the company is practically crawling because it's too complicated. There is no direction. It's too big. It's a conglomerate. And maybe India's a family-run place, so maybe inside the family there somebody is fighting. One is going left, one is going right. So there are too many issues. So then the second stage is called the ideation stage, where the promoter sits and says that this is wrong. Something needs to change in order for me to create a value in my group. So what he does, he announces the corporate action and he gives his plan as to what he wants to do. Why is he doing this? So the second stage is actually called metamorphosis. It's an event where one animal changes into another animal. So this is the planning stage. This is the stage where a company announces its plan, is going through this change. If we can identify at this stage, if the plan makes sense and the value is going to be derived one way or the other, we can make a lot of money. There is no point. So the caterpillar is a normal situation. There is no point touching that caterpillar because it's going to remain a caterpillar. But if you can identify when the company has actually laid out its plan and actually gone to the exchanges and said, I'm going to do a demerger, or somebody else is going to run the company, there's going to be a new promoter, that is the stage of change in the company that we need to figure out, and we need to get into that company at that point. And then once phase 3 starts, this is the phase where it's a new entity altogether. It is no more that caterpillar which used to be earlier. Something has changed in it. It's got wings. It's a different animal altogether now. And now you will notice that the market is going to start to value it differently, because the market is also going to see that it's a different thing altogether. It is no more that Caterpillar. So earlier, if I was giving the conglomerate a 5 PE, or maybe I was not giving valuation to the some entity inside the conglomerate which was loss making. Now suddenly the loss making entity is listed. You have to assign some value to the loss making entity also. It cannot trade at a minus valuation. So the market will start assigning value to the split up companies. And that is a very important phase. And if you get it right, the fourth phase is called the phase of liberation. That is where we need to reach. We need to identify the caterpillar. We need to identify when it's going to make that change. And we need to stick in this journey till it becomes the big, beautiful butterfly that it becomes in this photo. And if you can identify this journey, this is the journey of a special situation. You're going to end up being a pretty successful investor, whether if you can do it full time and understand this, you're going to end up becoming very successful over the years. There are multiple examples. Maybe offline we can discuss this more in detail, but I'll just, to save time, we'll just fast forward a little bit. So we discussed about the stocks, what happens when the stocks are in special situation. Right now, due to COVID, the world has gone into a special situation. You saw in special situation, when a special situation happens to a stock, how a company or how a stock can react and go to a different situation altogether. But when the whole world has gone into, because of COVID, into a special situation right now, where wealth effect is happening, where there is a supply chain disruption, where people want to de-risk from China and go to a different, China plus one kind of strategy, where cargo rates have gone up. Everything has changed. People are digitizing, people are working from home, people have moved from one place to another place. So this is also called a special situation. The special situation is not happening in a particular stock, but is happening for the world over stock market. And thanks to COVID, the entire the market, the way it fell well below its actual true value. And then due to the special situation in the market as a whole, you had a year like never before. You ended up making 5x, 10x in any stock you bought, you made money. So the power of special situation is that you need to figure out when that process of change is happening. It could be in the stock market altogether, or it could be in a particular stock. So now after a year or two, when the market becomes a normal situation again, so no, special situation, normal situation. So when the market comes back to a normal situation, you'll find that all these cyclical names, which are probably rallying today, will all come back to square one. You'll find all these low quality, low corporate governance kind of companies. The cycle will repeat and all those companies will come back to square one. So it's very important to kind of remain with quality stocks. So have quality and buy them cheap, basically value plus growth, and you will be fine. When the special situation becomes the normal situation also, you'll be fine. Your stocks will still continue to do good. So that was more on the strategy. I just like to say a little bit about the fund, if you allow me to.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So this is how we shaped up in the last 12 months. It was, again, as I said, it's an outlier. Everybody made money, so nothing special in that sense, but we made the most money, let's put it that way. And we made the most money by a mile, because the average of the PMS returns, I think, are 60 or 70%. So at 209, I think we've done okay. 2-year CAGR is also pretty nice. And this is, I would rate, is purely down to the special situation strategy that we have. Or else we would also, if you're doing normal things, you'll also have a normal return. But when you're doing something which is very different and unique, you may end up having a very different and unique return when you get it right. So what do we not do? So when we said that, we want to invest in XYZ kind of stocks, what do we not invest in? when this market is going to get back into a normal situation where the men will get separated from the boys again, and it is going to happen at some point, you will find all these cyclical stocks, which I mentioned in the first part, they are all going to go back to their square one. And if you, except for this 1 year's returns apart, you take any steel company, for example, even the best of the best name, and you figure out what their returns have been from 2000 to 2019. They have not created any wealth. Maybe something like a JSW has gone up 4 times since 2004 to 2019, and now it's gone up because of this big special situation that happened in the market. But this year aside, if you just take a long enough, if you go and see US Steel, the chart of US Steel, you may even broaden the horizon for many, many, many decades, and you will find there's no wealth creation, because companies where the return on capital is so low and any further incremental growth has to happen with lots of capex and lots of debt, it is not worth it. So you are better off always looking at ROIC, return on capital, first. And if the return on capital is like 30, 35%, 25% also, you're going to end up doing much better. What we don't touch is also construction, infrastructure, real estate, all those kind of baskets. Same reason, return on capital being very low. You have to do heavy capex in order to grow. Growth comes at a cost over here. Lots and lots of money has to be put, and it's upfront cost for the company. You have to put up 1,000 crore plant, or you have to set up a new building. You have to put up 1,000 crores. And without me taking the word, working in India, how many palms you have to grease in order to get your things done. So it's not easy to do these kind of businesses in India. And of course, there are outliers and everything, but on the whole, on average, if you going to invest in a construction theme on average and make a portfolio backed by this, it's unlikely that over a long period of time this is going to create wealth. Then again, what I don't like to do is small regional banks or NBFCs, again, they can't compete with the big boys in the way the way the big boys have corporate governance, the way they use technology. For example, a Bajaj Finance kind of a company today, the amount of technology they are using, it's phenomenal. It's Bajaj Finance, I would say, is a technology company more than an NBFC. And now if you're going to expect some small regional bank or some small regional NBFC to go and compete with Bajaj Finance, it's not going to happen. It's not possible that they can compete. So always these kind of small regional players, they have to settle for a mediocre set of clients or customers where the payback may not be as good. And also their cost of borrowing is always much higher than the big guys. So they are again, so investing in a normal situation in these kind of companies, I don't know how somebody is going to end up making money. But yes, now imagine a situation where in a regional bank or an NBFC where you have a small promoter exiting and a big guy coming and buying into this. That could be a real wealth creator opportunity. So for example, again, whatever I say right now is not investment advice. Let's say a company like Magma FinCorp, for example, where the old promoters have exited and the Poonawallas have come in, or Catholic Syrian Bank, where Fairfax took a stake, and earlier Catholic Syrian Bank, I don't know what they were up to, but the way the cleanup is happening inside, you can see that the company is going through that early, they just exited the metamorphosis stage, and that early change in direction. Earlier they were going left, now they're going right. So if you can find in a regional bank or NBFC, if a small guy is exiting and a big promoter like Fairfax, the Vatsa, or else the big guys like Poonawalla coming and taking a small NBFC, they can end up doing big things. Again, not investment advice, just I'm trying to say how we must look at things. If you buy a Magma when it was a caterpillar, you're going to get appropriate returns. The company did nothing. But now it's no more a caterpillar. Maybe it will still fail. I mean, I'm not saying that it's 100% going to go up. It could still fail. But if you have if you manage your risk, and if you make a portfolio backed by a bunch of these kind of situations, the odds are that your portfolio is not going to be linked to the stock market. The stock market will keep going up and down. It'll do what it has to do. But your portfolio will probably be in a different trajectory in a different state of mind altogether. And again, one last thing that I don't like to do is we don't own any PSU company or any company that relies on the government for its income. The biggest thing is that if you invest in a PSU, the person in charge of that PSU, no disrespect here, I'm just trying to educate. I'm not, everybody is free to do what they want to do, but I'm just trying to educate here. Think about it. If you are investing in a PSU, the person in charge there, the CEO, what is he going to get? Whether the market cap is 1,000 crores or 20,000 crores, he's bothered only about his salary. Probably doesn't even have any management, ESOPs or something like that. So they are not bothered. They are not going to work day and night, Sunday night, Saturday night. They are not going to lose sleep to make sure the company goes to the next level. Then why should investors invest in something like this? It makes no sense. They don't fire employees, non-performing employees. एक बार employee को ले लिया तो employees with them only all their life, whether it's performing or not performing. So the culture is not there. So doesn't make sense. Now again, if a special situation comes in this and government will probably privatize a bunch of companies, then everything changes here also. So keep an eye. Don't buy a PSU when it's a caterpillar. Buy a PSU when it becomes a cocoon. Basically going through that second phase where the announcement has come and the new guys have already been identified who are going to take over. That will be the time to get into a PSU theme portfolio. It could end up doing wonderful. Again, not investment advice. So what is the core mission? The core mission for doing this is like, once you make your wealth, you have to preserve it, right? How many times we hear it, like people end up making wealth in not so good companies, and then those companies end up going to zero. A great example of this, I mean, I'm not calling any of the examples I take, I'm not calling them not so great. It's just because I have the benefit of hindsight to call them not so great today. But let's say something like a Unitech or a Kingfisher airline, where they went up and then they crashed. So you need to avoid them altogether. So make little less money if you have to, but be in a solid tech, pharma, something like that, kind of background, where even if you don't understand special situation and you don't want to do that, buy a bunch of ETFs, different growth ETFs, or buy a small case of tech or pharma stocks, and you'll be fine. And just keep doing opportunistic SIP. If the market goes down by 5%, or if your portfolio goes down by 5%, put some money and make it a habit of putting some money. And if you own and you'll realize over 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, if you own a bunch of good companies, and if you do regular SIP, whenever the good time comes, you practically cannot lose money in the stock market, owning a bunch of good stocks and diversifying your risk in a nice way. So, and if you mix that habit with SIP, you're golden. You can, and you don't even have any compulsions like a fund manager has. You can hold on as per your, you can hold on for how much ever time. There's no redemption pressure. There's no pressure of performance. You can do whatever you feel like, but utilize this power to do good. Own good stocks. Once you make the wealth, don't give it back. Do SIP and take a path which is not taken by others. Do something unique. Make your own system and don't follow other people blindly. Because, for example, I may say something, I may buy something, and before you know it, I've already exited. Then you will be stuck with it when it goes down. So don't follow other people in blindly. Figure out what they're saying and then implement and learn and implement yourself. Become a full-time investor in that sense. And if you cannot become a full-time investor, then you give it to an investment manager to do it for you. At least you can be assured that the person who is managing it for you is working day and night, and you can sleep over it.
Yeah, what you rightly said, that's the whole idea. So even at AIF and PMS experts, we also keep advising the same thing, that you have to have a professional management and a professional approach towards your hard-earned money. There's no point buying the stocks which is recommended by somebody else.
Exactly. If you're a full-time investor, why not? Then you can do it. But what I've noticed is 99% of the people are not full-time investors. And think about it, if I go and start boxing with Muhammad Ali or Mike Tyson, I'll be knocked out. And that's what happens, because I don't know anything about boxing, but it looks good. So if you're going to be a full-time boxer, go, by all means, go and do boxing. But if you're not a full-time investor or a full-time boxer, then let somebody else do the boxing for you, or let somebody else do the investing for you, and you will find wealth will be made for you regularly if you have a bunch of good investment managers doing it for you. So I think we have a couple of more slides and we are done with the presentation. Some ideas only for educational purposes again. What I wanted to talk about in a world like today where the markets are high, what can you buy where you can find, that it is still cheap, but it could still create value. So the GMR demerger looks pretty nice. Before I get into it, we have no exposure in any of this. So we are just talking for educational purpose. The GMR airport business, again, it's a high quality asset into a very complicated conglomerate of GMR where they have so many businesses that probably they also don't know what is inside. But when they demerge, the demerger is going to happen soon. When the airport business gets demerged, the airport business will have phenomenal valuation when it gets demerged. And over the years, you may find the stock market is going up and down and the economy is going up and down, but the airport numbers will be perfect. They will keep increasing year on year. So when you're going to find new ideas after the demerger, the airport business could look good. I spoke about Magma earlier. Again, a small regional NBFC taken over by a very big, very competent group like the Poonawallas. They are generally the best at whatever they do. So when they take over a small regional NBFC, they'll get the best of the team and run it. Think of it like a startup. It could go to any valuation. And if somebody invests out of India, if you've been following me, you must be knowing I'm a big fan of the music streaming business. So Spotify, a music platform, I feel in America, I think not many better companies than this at the moment. So that's it from me. Thank you, Vikaji, for inviting me. If anybody wants to follow me on Twitter, that's my handle, and I have a newsletter also. So if anyone wants to register for the newsletter, you can go on this link and just put your email ID and you're done.
All right. So thank you so much. It was a great presentation, Neil. So much to learn. 2 or 3 things before we go to all the investors and request them to start typing their questions in Q&A box. There are some people who are typing their questions in chat box, so I would request them to retype their questions in Q&A box. Okay, Neil, so broadly, if you could give us a sense that how is your portfolio looks like, A, and B, you also look at many times, I've seen in your portfolio, you also look at some demerger stocks, demerger opportunities. So can you throw some more lights on that as well?
So our portfolio is divided between technology companies, because that I feel is a big mega trend going forward, and between special situations. Under special situations, we do demergers and we do promoter change category. So normally we have 60% towards special situation, about 40% towards technology. And that is the split that we do. Currently also that is around the split that we have.
Okay, understood. So now with that, we'll start taking the questions quickly. So the first question comes from Mr. Amit Ranjan. The question is, there is a buzz in the market that markets are going to correct by 10 to 15%. So what's your view? Should we invest now or should we invest post the correction?
So again, I think we touched up on this topic, and I was showing my chart of the PMS to some of my clients earlier. And what we did was we put our NAV on a chart and we showed it to them based on all the corrections. So when the correction happened in last March, it seemed as if the world is going to end. That the March 2020 was such a sharp correction. But when we broadened the chart out over a long period of time, we saw that the correction of March was nothing but a small blip in the overall uptrend. So think of it as a long period that you're going to invest in. And if you think that you're going to invest for a long period of time and you're going to own a bunch of ETFs or a bunch of good companies, you don't really have to worry about the stock market. Let the stock market fall 20%. If it falls 20%, you do SIP. Figure out a way to invest partly now and partly via SIP at every 5% kind of dip. And you'll find yourself doing very good, wonderfully. And if you're buying a bunch of good stocks, let's say you bought Infosys and TCS, and Infosys and TCS fall 20%, you should thank your stars that you got them cheaper and buy some more.
Okay. The other question is, how do you keep a check on the corporate governance when you're buying stocks in your PMS account? And how many analysts work for you, and what is their mantra behind looking at these sort of issues?
Yeah. So, I'll explain via an example, which I always believe examples work better. So there's a company called CG Power. Now, CG Power was very badly run. It was very badly known for its corporate governance because the promoter used to sit out of India, and the company eventually ended up defaulting on a lot of debt. And if you're in the market, a bunch of promoters are very high on corporate governance and a bunch of promoters are very poor on corporate governance. So what happened was the old promoters defaulted and they exited. And suddenly at the price of some 4 or 5 rupees, you got the Murugappa group from the south taking over CG Power. And when you hear a name like them coming and taking over something, the corporate governance improves dramatically overnight. And what the market does, market gives an appropriate multiple for the corporate governance. The corporate governance multiple goes up. So you need to keep track of the people. You can go online and check if they have, if it's not the Murugappa group, if somebody else is coming, you can go on and check their track record. Another thing happened was there was a company called Swiss Glass Coat. In 2015 or 2016, they changed their management. That time, no one knew what is Swiss Glass Coat. No one knew, no one cared. The name of the company changed because of the new promoter came. And today, everybody knows that stock as HLE Glass Coat. HLE ended up becoming a 24 or 25 bagger. And it was a multi-bagger in 2018. When 2018, all the small caps and the mid caps were falling. HLE was in a different trajectory, or it was in a trajectory of discovery. So we need to be doing special situations, and where you find a not so good promoter has exited, and a good new promoter like a CG Power, mein Murugappa came, or HLE guys came in Swiss Glass Coat, they can completely turn around the business and the valuations, and then these stocks will then delink from the stock market. So I look at corporate governance in this way: be connected and watch for clues. And in terms of how many analysts work for us, we have, I think we have 4 analysts right now, a team strength of 15 people. It's a largely digital business. We don't need more than 15. So 15 is a good strength. And fund manager, we have 2 fund managers and 4 analysts. If that's the question.
Okay. And what is your exit strategy? Like there's an example which is given by somebody that, we made 3x in 9 months in Happiest Mind. So then what is your exit strategy? Should we come out of it or should we hold on to it?
Happiest Minds did very good for us. But again, in terms of exit strategy, when you have a company like Happiest Minds, for example, if you take that company probably is going to grow for the next 10 years. So in that period of 10 years, if it is gotten expensive on a 1 year or 2 year basis, it should not change anything for you. Think about it. What would have happened? Would Buffett have sold Coca-Cola many years ago when Coca-Cola got expensive for a brief period of time? The answer would be no. Would Junjunwala would have sold CRISIL because it got expensive for a particular amount of time? No. So if you need to identify and ask yourself this question: did I buy it for a trade or did I buy it for an investment? And if you really have done your work on Happiest Minds and know what they're into, the quality of the promoter, the age of the promoter, you would realize that this company is onto something very different from the normal IT companies. It's a new age IT company. And well, yeah, it's probably overpriced right now. Maybe it falls 20%, who knows? But the price, what it could give you after 5 years or 10 years could be very, very different from what it is today. So I don't worry too much about short-term overvaluation when I am very bullish on the long-term pattern of the company. If I know from my own point of view that I bought it for a trade, then I would just sell it and get out, be done with it. But if it's not a trade and if it's an investment, then the story is not even started for Happiest Minds, in my opinion.
Okay. Uh, Another interesting question: how does your PMS give exposure to a startup companies?
Okay. So there is a little bit of miscommunication here. The PMS, as per SEBI regulation, is not allowed to invest in startups. What we have done in Negen Capital is we have created a platform where we put all our 254 plus clients, we put them on this platform and we present startups from time to time. And we are again the only PMS to kind of have a system like this where our existing clientele gets an opportunity to look at the startup and at their own discretion, they can decide whether they want to invest in it or not. Typically, the ticket size could be 5 to 6 lakh rupees to invest in a startup. But and startups are very risky also, you need to know that, where they can even fail, but with the risk comes great reward also. And if you end up getting your startup portfolio right, it can change somebody's life. But again, it's risky, you need to keep that in mind, and it's only suitable for ultra HNI people who make money from the stock market or have regular income, and a small part of that income can get invested into startups. So we provide our investors a platform where they can participate in the startup boom that India is going through right now. And we are the only guys, and we've got great reviews right now for this platform that we've made.
So that's a different platform altogether.
Yeah.
A and
the
B.
PMS cannot invest in that. So the client has to invest separately into it.
Separately, A and B, they have to be a PMS client for that.
Yeah, they have to be a PMS client for
the
that.
The eligibility is that they have to have PMS running with you.
Yeah.
And then over and above, you might advise them to look at some startups.
Yeah, and they have to invest at their own discretion. If they don't like a particular startup that I'm suggesting, they can just say, no, I don't like this one, and they can wait for the next one.
The discretion of the investor and not the fund.
Yeah, we don't do it. We present the startup. It's like an investment banking activity. Sure. We present the startup and the investor has to decide whether yes or no.
Sure. The other interesting question is that and this is the view of many investors, they feel that these sort of special situation opportunities generally don't come. It comes maybe once in a blue moon. Can you throw some more lights? What is your take on that?
So what I have realized is that they are very common. Lots and lots of special situations are happening every day, and they have different timelines. And I feel if you actually put in the work and go there and look for opportunities in the special situation category, you will find that every given time there are at least 20-25 companies doing something to unlock value via special situation. So I would kind of disagree. Yeah, he's right. It's not like there are multiple stocks doing it, but there is a pretty nice set of companies all the time, 20, 25, sometimes even 40, 50 companies going through special situation, and then you have to pick and choose what you like is best.
Yeah, of course. So there are, if you look at 6,000 companies which are listed today in India, and each one of them have their own cycles, and their own thought process in terms of expanding, etc. So, I think the way you are looking at is, I'm talking to our investor, is from a price perspective, you are looking at and trying to identify that opportunity. But if you let go the price and look at the cycles around and then try and understand, then you will see that, there is opportunity.
Yeah,
coming in the regular.
I'll give you an example of a great special situation that happened in pharma. What Sequent Scientific, it demerged as a nobody company. No one cared about it. And it got taken over by Carlyle. and Carlyle are experts at turning around companies, and they integrated Sequent with their ecosystem. And you see I think the demerger happened at 60 rupees or 50 rupees, and today it crossed 300 within a span of maybe a year and a half or 1 year. So there are so many such opportunities that, like Max Healthcare is another great example where a not so great corporate governance situation, it became a MNC company. I'll even tell you one more which happened recently is Renuka Sugar, where Wilmar came and took it over. So if you see all these companies, there are so many examples. The biggest special situation that you know in our lifetime was Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's company. Warren Buffett came and took it over. Before Warren Buffett came, it was a struggling textile company. So special situations are all around us. They're happening all the time. It's just that investors need to focus and figure out what is the normal situation, and don't buy the caterpillar. If somebody's gone through, had been in this presentation earlier, don't buy the caterpillar, buy the butterfly. When it's gone through that initial phase of special situation, it will do good in life.
All right, so number of questions are going up, Neil, just to inform you. So the other question is, how many stocks do you hold in your PMS on an average?
Yeah, so again, a very good question. What I find is that some of my peers, or maybe the mutual fund industry, they have hundreds of stocks. Particularly, I feel there is no chance of creating alpha when you own 100 plus companies in the portfolio. And then I find some peers owning only 4 or 5 stocks. And that I find is super risky, because no matter what good company you're owning, something can go wrong. What if the promoter gets COVID? And I'm just saying, something can go wrong at any given time. So if you own 4 or 5 stocks, again, that is also a mistake. But so our ideal sweet spot is 20 to 25 stocks that we own at all times.
So 15 to 20 stocks is what?
Not 15, 20 to 25.
20 to 25. Okay. Okay, the question is from Mr. Bajaj. He wants to know what all products that you have over and above. So I think he's already explained that for a startup, there is a separate network on which he keeps advising clients, and it's a client discretion to invest.
Yeah, in terms of the strategy, we have only one PMS and one strategy. That's it. We are having an expertise only in one thing. It's not like we have multiple different strategies doing different things. There's only one strategy where we have our expertise in, and we want to do only that. We want to be the best at what we do and continue doing that. And apart from that, one PMS strategy, we have created an alternate universe where we have a startup investing platform. So our existing pool of investors keep getting fed with startup opportunities, and if they like it, at their own discretion, they can invest in the startups.
Okay, where do you put your own money?
I generally co-invest in the startups and the stocks that we invest. I always have skin in the game in that sense.
Okay, how do you track these companies and those companies which are going to demerge?
So yeah, one of the slides I spoke about it. There's mayhem and confusion. There is no information also. And that is the beauty of it. There is no way you can just go on the internet and get a list in one place of all the demergers or all the specific situations that are happening, because no one is paying attention. And that is the opportunity for you and me. Let us make merry while other people are busy buying HDFC Bank and the same set of Asian Paints and other things. There is a whole new world over here where nobody is scared or no one even bothers to look at. So it's a market for you and I to exploit.
The other question is from Mr. Kela. It's a very good question. He's saying that you talked about, given the example of Caterpillar. But what is the success ratio overall when you invest?
Yeah. So it's not a blind, blanket buy all demergers and buy all special situations and you'll make money. For example, Syntex went to zero. Syntex also did a demerger. It went to zero. And maybe there was a Talwarkers which did demerger and went to zero. Lhasa, there was a company called Lhasa, Omkar Specialty Chemicals, that also went to zero. So ऐसा नहीं है कि आप demerger के नाम पे उठा लोगे and you'll so a lot of work goes in. So this was a presentation where I wanted to explain in very simple words as to why it benefits, but it's not a fairy tale where you just buy anything. A lot of work has to go in.
Yeah. So next question is, you seems to have 40% exposure in technologies. So does it mean only large cap, or you have some mid and small cap like Tata Alexis of the world, or Apple India, or Mobile, or India Marts?
Yeah, so we have all kinds of tech names. We have even the ETS, which invest in America. From that, we get exposure to Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, those kind of names. So they are large caps. Then we have small cap tech names like Indian music streaming companies. I call them technology companies, whether market agrees or not. Uh, Tips Industries or Saregama, they are basically internet companies today. They have put all their songs on YouTube. So we have small cap, we have mid cap, we have large cap, we have US large cap. So we've spread our risk pretty nicely amongst this whole universe, where I think that the whole universe will grow between 15 and 25%. And if you can find the best in class stocks at reasonable valuation, you will do very good.
Okay, next question is, I would like to answer this. So what is the minimum threshold of investment in PMS? So that's 50 lakhs as per the revised norm shared by our regulator SEBI.
Yeah.
What kind of commercial pricing model do you have for retail investor? I think it's question more to do with your small case where your fund is listed. Can you also throw some more lights there?
Okay, so he wants to know about the pricing of the small case?
Pricing and how is different the strategies from PM.
So the small case is a basic model, while the PMS is a basic plus premium model. Let's call it like that. In the small case, we cannot do special situations the way we can do in a PMS, because the small case is an advisory model. So at the core of it, the strategy in the small case and the PMS is similar. But in the small case, I cannot get into demergers in a way I can get into the PMS, because the small case has limitations. The platform, it cannot calculate the demergers properly. So you would find that after the demerger gets done, only then we buy something in the small case. So we end up missing on a lot of opportunities in the small case that we don't end up missing in the PMS. So what we did, we thought that because of this, we need to change the thinking. So we made the small case more of a passive compounding product, and we made the PMS an actively managed product, where something like a Tips or a Saregama, when we discover it, we can quickly buy it in the PMS. But in the small case, it's almost impossible to buy a Tips or a Saregama or some demerger or something certainly that I want to buy, because we have so many clients and it's an advisory thing. So I give a rebalance, then the client gets the rebalance in the night. He has to execute it next day. There is no market. I mean, there is no limit order. There's only market order. So there's too many limitations. So in small case, we identified a bunch of best in class companies in our universe of special situations, and we want to hold this for say 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. But in the PMS, we do it in an actively managed thing where we can buy every single opportunity that we want to buy. We can even apply in IPOs. In small case, I can't do anything. It's a basic model. Basically, the whole point of doing small case for me was to reach out to the retail investor community as a mission from my end, so that the retail community gets access to PMS fund managers and not, some UP based or indoor based tipsters and those kind of guys, even the unregistered people. So it's important to help build the community. We thought we'll start the small case. It's a very basic model, and if anybody is an HNI and can do 50 lakhs as the investment, they should go into the PMS, so that you even get access to the startup channels.
All right. So is this a good opportunity to invest in music streaming businesses in India?
So again, I cannot give direct advice to you that you go and buy it. All I can tell you is that I believe that music streaming is a very good opportunity, not only in India. So in India, I love Tips and Saregama. They are my biggest position today. But in America, Spotify is a great opportunity, I feel. Spotify, Universal Music. If you see, Bill Ackman, which is one of the world's biggest investors, recently putting $4 billion in Universal Group, which is also a music streaming company. He's putting 28,000 crores. He's basically a huge bet by one of the world's best investors. Now is happening recently. He gave a big presentation. Go on Google, go on YouTube, and put Bill Ackman Universal presentation and go through that presentation. The way he's talking about music streaming, I completely agree with his thoughts. So I believe music streaming is a big opportunity, but then it's not a direct advice to you.
Sure. What's the best way to look for such special situations? What are the indicators?
The best way is to become a client of Negen. So you don't have to do much. But if you are a full-time investor and you want to do it on your own, I guess you have to stay connected with the market. You have to do it with dedication. A lot of hours go into it. I don't know. We are constantly working till 2 a.m. every night. You have to give up on a lot of things. You have to give up on a lot of things in order to do this.
Yeah, just to add what Neil is saying, that it's a different process altogether. You need to set the process. You need to hire right kind of people involved in it. Their full-time job is to sort of keep evaluating those companies, identify where the special situation is coming from. So I would urge that these sort of things are not to be,
definitely not
at home without any expertise.
If you have a job or a business, then definitely not. It is a full-time event. Being a normal investor is a full-time event. Being a special situation investor is definitely a full-time event.
So when you see some difficult dance show happening on TV, you see there's a disclaimer coming in that don't do it.
Don't do it at home,
without any expert's advice. So here also I would say that these sort of things are supposed to have a different process altogether. You require a good number of people and their a different strategy altogether. So I would urge all the investors, especially those who are retail investors, not to really do all these things with your hard-earned money, and hire a professional portfolio manager whose full-time job is to evaluate these opportunities for you and make it available to you. All right. So what's your view? There are a couple of individual stocks questions, so I'm not taking them, but very quickly, just one or two only from example perspective, nothing else. So what's your views on Thyrocare acquisition? Does it qualify for special situation category? So you can take the second question.
Yeah. So I've written a blog post on this via my newsletter about Thyrocare. It is definitely a special situation. Thyrocare, until recently, was run by a very good promoter. No harm with the promoter. He's a very nice promoter, honest promoter. But he became old, okay, without a second generation in the business. And what we saw, that the growth of Thyrocare was lagging. I think the CAGR is 11% in Thyrocare, growth revenue CAGR. Versus Metropolis, which is growing at 18% CAGR. There's a big, Metropolis is probably growing at double the speed. Why is that so? It's not that there is some kind of it's just that the promoter got old and started getting into charity work and philanthropy. There's nothing wrong in that. It's very good. It's a need of the hour to do charity work, but it is not working for the minority shareholders of Thyrocare. Thyrocare has the highest margins in the industry, more than Dr. Lal and more than Metropolis, but it has the lowest valuation. It has a big discount to Dr. Lal and Metropolis because the growth is not there, and the market, in a normal situation, as we explained in the presentation, market knows how to value what should be at a discount and what should be at a premium. Now, when PharmEasy promoter, which is the Gen Z, you can call them, the new age promoters from the unicorn system of India, has come and taken over a traditional company, I'll tell you right now, the PharmEasy guys have probably no intention of growing at 11% per annum. The growth trajectory of the company is set to change in a big way, in my humble opinion, and I could be wrong. But if it does change, Thyrocare's valuation also must change. It should not trade at the current valuation, and it should go at par with Dr. Lal and Metropolis. It should probably trade at a premium to them because the growth may exceed their growth in their coming years. So Thyrocare today, while it looks expensive, it's not is probably very cheap. Again, it's not investment advice, it's what I think. We own a position in Thyrocare already in our region PMS.
Okay, so how is your fee structure for PMS?
Okay, it's a good question. So fee structure is very diverse. Many people have different kind of fee structure. Most of the people have a AUM game going on where they just care about their AUM and they just want to track the index. So they charge a management fee, for example. We are in the different system altogether. So we have a simple structure of profit share. We charge a 15% profit share to be charged at the end of the year. If a client makes money, we make money. If the client doesn't make money, we don't make any money and client pays no fee. It's not that if there is going to be a next 3 years of a bear market, for example, and every year the expense ratio of 2.5-3% keeps going out of your pocket. That's not going to happen. So our fee structure is very simple. We've done away with the management fee, expense ratio, exit load, lock-in period. Everything is gone. We have only one simple profit share of 15%. And the clients are also very happy at our end. If they make money, they pay a fee. They know it.
So in a way, you're saying that the management fees is zero. If you deliver returns, whatever returns that you deliver, you take 15% of that. If there are no returns, there is no fees.
That's right.
Great. So there's another question I'd like to answer that. So he's asking which ETF to be looked at for US technology. You can look at Edelweiss US Technology Fund. You can look at NASDAQ 100 Fund. So these are the ETFs which are available. What kind of commercial? Okay, that we've already answered. There's another good question coming from Deepak ji. Can you share some few success stories as far as your PMS is concerned, some bumper profits that you made?
I'll tell you about our biggest position until last year, until very recently. It was called Green Panel. So Green Panel was earlier under the main company, which was called Green Ply. Green Ply was India's largest plywood company. So any mutual fund that bought Green Ply bought it because of Green Ply, the plywood business. What they recently did, they have the family managed business. So there were two brothers. So one brother was handling the plywood. The other brother started his own MDF business inside of Green Ply. So the MDF business was new, but a growth business. So then I don't know what happened and they decided to do a family split. It was decided that one brother will keep the plywood business and the other brother would keep the very small, tiny MDF business. Now imagine what would happen. Imagine yourself. I think Deepak ji asked the question, right? So imagine Mr. Deepak, imagine yourself, you invested into Green Ply for the plywood business, and as a shareholder, you get two shares now after the demerger, one of the plywood business, one of the MDF business. Especially if you're an institutional guy, you're going to do one simple thing. One is the big company, one is a very tiny micro cap, 300-400 crore company. You're going to sell the micro cap. You're not going to keep it. You invested for a particular thesis. You got it approved by your investment committee sitting somewhere. So you did a lot of this process, and so when you get something else, you're not going to keep it. So the whole market, all the mutual funds, all the FIIs, everybody decided to dump the MDF business, thinking that it's too small to matter. They had invested 1,000 crores in the new plant. And due to the forced selling of all the mutual funds, the valuation, the market cap of Green Panel fell to 300 crores at the lowest point. Now the assets were 1,000 crores, and the plan was that whatever debt was there, they're going to repay the debt. So you're going to probably ended up getting a debt-free company in the next 3-4 years with 1,000 crores of asset for 300 crores. It became a proper value investment, but it went to 300 crores not because the market valued it at 300 crores with proper thinking. No, because a bunch of very big people sold it at any price. They didn't care, just get me out of it, that mentality. So Green Panel listed at I think about 55, 60 rupees, fell to 25 rupees. We got in at 30 rupees, and then we picked up some more at 27 odd rupees. And within a year and a half, in 2019, all this happened. Within a year and a half, today it hit a high of 270 rupees. It went up 10 times. And even at 270, I think it is very cheap, considering where the other stocks trade in the market in the same space. It could end up doing much more. So that is one of the systems. So the common thinking behind the special situation was buy some company when it's going through a change, and during that change you may end up getting opportunities to do value investing. So value investing should only be via special situation. That is the original thinking.
Sure. Sadashiv ji, I think you raised your hand, so I've allowed you to speak. Anything that you want to speak? All right. The other question is from Mr. Jan. He wants to know what is the minimum investment to be a part of Negen. So for PMS, minimum is 50 lakhs. And for small case, what is the minimum, Neil, there?
The minimum ticket size for small case is only 76,000. Although I don't suggest people with a budget of only 76,000 to invest in small case, because the fee is 14,000. If you put 76,000 and pay 14,000 as fee, that's going to be a huge fee outgo for you in terms of percentage. Ideally, if you want to do small case, you should at least invest 3 lakhs, 2 to 3 lakhs to begin with, and then do regular SIP. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So with that, there are no more questions, and there are few questions specifically for certain stocks which we are not allowed to discuss as part of the best practice. So please accept our sincere apologies. We cannot afford to take those questions. But you can always discuss this one-on-one either with me or Neil. So you can reach out to me. You can write an email to me at vikas@aifpms.com, and we will get those questions answered. So once again, thank you so much to all the participants for taking the time out from their busy weekends. I know it's a movie time and all of you are attending and listening to us. So this indicates to me that all of you are really serious about creating wealth. So once again, thank you so much. And I would urge each one of you to start spreading words about the kind of work that we are doing by organizing these sessions, inviting domain experts like Neil, and discussing about these topics, which I'm sure all of you are really keen to know how to enhance your overall wealth. So the whole idea, the mission of our organization is very, very clear. That given an opportunity, we'd like to invite people like Neil, speak, understand more, and enhance your wealth. So once again, thank you so much. Thank you, Neil, for you to take out the time from your busy schedule and joining in and interacting with all of us and answering all the questions so patiently.
No, it was actually a pleasure to be here. I mean, I think it's a wonderful initiative that you have started. It's much needed. We need more people like you to help connect the investor community and have a two-way communication that way. So I think all thanks to you, and thanks to everyone to be here today, who were here today. I hope the presentation and the talk added value to you, and we'll continue to do our best.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. And this is the feedback that we keep getting, and I keep sharing this with most of the investors. If you look at, I'm sure you developed economies, you're tracking yourself, NASDAQ and other markets. There, the allocation of the investment is done basis the expertise of the fund house or the portfolio managers. But unlike in India, where most of the time, most of the investments are done basis the brand, the brand image, or they would have heard this from some other people. The way we put out things is we put out the numbers on the table. So we are a very, very data-driven organization. And the way we want is, if the portfolio manager is deserving, let the allocation to go to a deserving portfolio managers who have different expertise. and different expertise and different processes, then to go for only the brand name. So not to go against the brand name, but let the deserving portfolio manager to get the allocation. That's the whole idea.
You are right. In America, funds flow automatically. Here we have to do a lot. Yeah, here there's a lot of legacy players who have just the brand name. But maybe things will change going forward thanks to companies like yours who is helping people understand more.
That's our time. So once again, thank you so much.
It was great to be here. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Bye. Take care. Have a good weekend.